The council chamber filled with worried voices from a dozen different species. Ambassador Tylevin stood at the center platform, his crystalline body reflecting the dim emergency lights. He had called this meeting 3 hours ago, and now every major species in the galaxy had sent representatives. Something impossible had happened, and no one knew what to do about it. Haiyan Wu's face appeared on the massive view screen that dominated the far wall. He looked calm, almost peaceful, as he sat in his captain's chair aboard the Eternal Dawn. For 8 years, he had served as humanity's primary voice in galactic affairs. Everyone knew him. Everyone trusted him. That made his message even more disturbing. By the time you see this, we will be gone, Haiyan Wu said in the recording. His voice carried no anger, no fear, just a quiet finality. Humanity has decided to withdraw from galactic civilization. We thank you for the years of cooperation and friendship. We're leaving now. Please don't follow us. The message ended. The screen went dark. The council chamber erupted into chaos. G-1 pushed through the crowd of delegates, her Vrexian uniform crisp despite the rush to get here. As a military analyst, she had been tracking ship movements for the past decade. She had noticed something strange 3 days ago, but thought it was a sensor malfunction. Now she understood the truth was far worse. Every human colony is dark, she announced, her voice cutting through the noise. Every station, every ship, every outpost. They all went silent within a 72-hour window. We're talking about 300 million humans across 2,000 locations, all disappearing at once. A Morphid delegate raised one of its many limbs. Disappearing? You mean they left? I mean they vanished, G1 corrected. She pulled up a star map on her personal display and projected it for everyone to see. Red dots marked where human settlements had been just 4 days ago. Now those dots were gray. No warp signatures. No distress signals. No debris fields. They powered down their systems in perfect synchronization and then ceased to exist in any detectable form. The singing colony's representative. A being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix. Broadcast waves of confusion. How is this possible? We had trade ships en route to human stations. Those ships arrived to find empty facilities with all the lights still on and food still warm in the dining halls. Tylevin raised his arms, calling for order. We need to remain calm. There must be a logical explanation. A Vrexian general stood up, his scales darkening with anger. This is an act of war. The humans have developed some kind of weapon, some technology they've hidden from us. They could be planning an attack. G1 shook her head. With respect, General, that makes no sense. If humanity wanted to attack us, why would they warn us first? Why would they leave everything behind? The general had no answer to that dot across the galaxy. In a small research station orbiting the Vrexian homeworld, Dr. Sun-Hee woke to the sound of alarms. She stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and nearly crashed into her Vrexian colleague in the hallway. What's happening? Sun-Hee asked. The Vrexian researcher looked at her with wide eyes. You haven't heard? All the humans are gone. Every single one. Except you. Sun-Hee felt her blood go cold. She ran to the communications center and started sending messages. Earth, Luna Base, New Pyongyang Station. The research colony on Tau City Prime, her brother's ship, her mother's university. She sent messages to every human she knew, every human location she could remember. Nothing came back. For 3 hours, she sat at that terminal, sending message after message into the void. Finally, one message returned. Not from Earth or any human colony, but from another research station halfway across the galaxy. A woman named Minji responded. I'm here, the message said. I'm still here. Are there others? Over the next day, they found 15 more. 17 humans in total, scattered across dozens of worlds, all left behind when their species departed. Sun-Hee created a private communication network for them. They shared information, theories, and growing fear. Engineer Min-ji had the most disturbing theory. What if they didn't leave voluntarily? What if something took them? Back at the Galactic Council, G1 assembled a team to investigate. She chose carefully, picking representatives from species that had worked closely with humans. They needed to understand what had happened, and fast. The galaxy's economy was already showing signs of stress. Humans handled 63% of trade negotiations, one economic advisor reported. Without them, we're seeing disputes break out across 100 different shipping routes. Tile Vin reviewed reports from his intelligence network. It's worse than that. Humans were involved in nearly every conflict resolution effort in the past decade. They had a talent for finding middle ground that satisfied everyone. Without them, old grudges are surfacing. G1 pulled up departure data from the past 5 years. Something caught her attention. Look at this. Human ship movements over the last 60 months. They've been slowly pulling back from key positions. Training replacements. Documenting their work. Settling debts. What are you saying? Tylvin asked. I'm saying this wasn't sudden. They planned this. Years in advance. G1 highlighted specific data points. They made sure every technology they shared with us was fully documented. They trained non-human engineers to maintain their systems. They wrapped up their affairs, like someone preparing for a long journey. A Kelthrine representative, a young one named Taeyang, spoke up. But why? Humans seemed happy here. They had friends, families, lives built over generations. Why would they all agree to leave? No one had an answer. G1's team began visiting abandoned human facilities. Each one told the same story. Everything left in perfect order. Maintenance manuals translated into multiple languages. Training programs ready to activate. Food still in storage. Personal belongings left behind, as if the owners had simply stepped out for a moment and never returned. On New Pyongyang Station, Taeyang made a discovery in the main computer core. Hidden behind layers of standard files, he found something unusual. Encrypted data packages, locked with quantum keys that would take years to break. What do you think is in there? He asked G-1. She stared at the encrypted files, a cold feeling spreading through her chest. The truth. Whatever made them leave, they left us a way to find out. They just didn't make it easy. As the investigation continued, Sun-Hee and the other abandoned humans struggled with their new reality. They held daily meetings, trying to make sense of why they had been left behind. Maybe they forgot about us, one suggested. 17 people across the entire galaxy? Sun-Hee shook her head. That's not forgetting. That's choosing. They chose to leave us here. But why? Min-ji asked. Sun-Hee had been thinking about that question constantly. She remembered something Hyen-Woo had said to her once years ago, when she had asked him about humanity's role in the galaxy. He had smiled and said, "We're here to help, not to stay." At the time, she thought he was being philosophical. Now she wondered if he had been trying to tell her something important. 3 months passed since humanity's disappearance, and the galaxy was beginning to feel the strain. G1 had been promoted to Investigator Prime, leading a team of specialists from 9 different species. They traveled from one abandoned human facility to another, searching for any clue that might explain the exodus. The investigation brought them to New Pyongyang Station, once a bustling trade hub that connected 3 major shipping lanes. The station still had power. The environmental system still worked. But there were no people. G1 walked through empty corridors that should have been filled with thousands of workers, traders, and families. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Tae-Yang followed close behind, his Kelthrine sensory apparatus scanning everything. "It's like they just vanished midday," he said. "There's a half-eaten meal in the cafeteria. Coffee cups still sitting on desks. A child's toy left in the middle of a playground. They left in a hurry?" G1 asked. "No, that's the strange part. Everything else is perfectly organized. Every computer terminal was properly shut down. Every door locked according to protocol. Every safety system engaged. It's only the personal items that were left behind, as if they were interrupted while doing normal things." In the station's administrative center, Tae-Yang made his most important discovery yet. Hidden in a maintenance database, behind layers of routine files, he found detailed instruction manuals for every piece of technology the humans had shared with other species. The manuals were translated into 17 different languages, complete with diagrams, troubleshooting guides, and maintenance schedules. "Look at this," Tae-Yang said, projecting the files. "These aren't basic instructions. These are comprehensive technical documents. It would have taken years to compile all of this." G1 read through one of the manuals. It covered the operation of a plasma conduit system that humans had designed for use in Rexian ships. The level of detail was extraordinary. They knew they wouldn't be coming back. They wanted to make sure we could maintain everything without them. Across the galaxy, Dr. Sun He and the other 16 abandoned humans were forming their own community. They met virtually every day, sharing theories and supporting each other through the isolation. Sun He had taken on an unofficial leadership role, organizing their discussions and keeping everyone focused. Minji had been working on a disturbing theory. "I've been analyzing the departure data that G1's team released to the public. Every human ship, station, and colony went dark within the same 72-hour period. But here's what's strange. The sequence wasn't random. It followed a pattern." "What kind of pattern?" Sun He asked. "It moved outward from Earth, like ripples on water. The closest human settlements went dark first, then the next layer, then the next. It took exactly 72 hours for the wave to reach the furthest human outposts." Another abandoned human, a teacher named Biora, spoke up. "That sounds coordinated, like they were following a plan." "Exactly," Minji said. "Which means this wasn't an evacuation or an emergency. This was organized. They had time to prepare." Sun He felt a chill run down her spine. If they had time to prepare, why didn't they tell anyone? Why didn't they tell us? No one had an answer. G1's investigation team continued their work. They visited abandoned colonies, empty space stations, and silent research outposts. Each location told the same story. The humans had left everything in perfect order, as if they were carefully closing a chapter of their history. On a former human agricultural world, they found greenhouses still running on automatic systems, producing food that no one would eat. The singing colonies had already sent workers to take over the farms, grateful for the continued production, but confused by the setup. "They left instructions for us," one of the colony workers reported. "Detailed farming schedules, crop rotation plans, pest management protocols. Everything we needed to keep these facilities running." At a human embassy on the Morphid homeworld, G1's team discovered archived diplomatic correspondence. Years of negotiations, carefully documented agreements, and detailed notes on various species' cultural preferences. It was like a guidebook for anyone who wanted to continue humanity's diplomatic work. But it was at an abandoned, listening post near the galactic rim that G1 found something that changed everything. The post was small, just a monitoring station with quarters for a dozen people. It had been used to track subspace anomalies along the edge of known space dot in the station commander's office. G1 found personal logs belonging to Hyun Woo. She almost couldn't believe it. The same Haiyan Wu who had delivered humanity's farewell message had been stationed here before his assignment to the Eternal Dawn. The logs were encrypted, but not with the quantum-level security they had found elsewhere. These were protected with standard diplomatic encryption, the kind the G1's team could break in a few hours. She wondered if that was intentional. When they finally accessed the logs, G1 spent an entire night reading through them. Haiyan Wu had written extensively during his time at the listening post. He wrote about the isolation, the strange sensor readings they picked up from beyond the rim, and his growing concern about something he simply called the change. One entry stood out. It was dated 2 years before humanity's departure. We've confirmed it now. The phenomenon we detected 6 months ago isn't a local anomaly. It's spreading, moving through the galaxy at a steady pace. Dr. Sun Hee's team at the Xenobiology Institute ran simulations. If current trends continue, it will reach the core systems within 5 years. We've called an emergency meeting on Earth. Every human leader, scientist, and philosopher. We need to decide what to do. Do we warn the other species? Do we try to find a solution? Or do we simply prepare for what's coming? G1 read the entry 3 times, her hands shaking. She called her team together and shared what she had found. What kind of phenomenon? Tae-young asked. What was spreading? He doesn't specify in these logs, G1 said. But whatever it was, it scared them enough to make them leave. Back on the Vrexian homeworld, Sun Hee received a message from G1 requesting a meeting. She traveled to the council chambers, nervous about what she might learn. G1 met her privately, away from the other investigators. I need to ask you something. In all your time working with humans, did anyone ever mention something called the change or the silence? Sun Hee thought carefully. I remember there was a classified research project about 5 years ago. They were studying something at the Galactic Edge. I asked my supervisor about it once, but he said it was above my clearance level. Did he seem worried? Not at first. But later, yes. I remember he started acting differently, more serious. He spent a lot of time in private meetings. And then, about 2 years ago, he told me I should consider taking an assignment away from human space. He said it would be good for my career. Gi-1 nodded slowly. They were protecting you. They knew they were going to leave, and they made sure you were somewhere safe. Safe from what? That's what we need to find out. The investigation took on new urgency. G1's team expanded their search, focusing on human facilities that had been involved in edge-of-space research. They found more encrypted files, or hidden data packages, all protected with quantum locks that would take years to break. But they also found something else. At an abandoned human research station, Tae-young discovered a set of sensor logs that hadn't been properly erased. The log showed readings from the galactic edge, tracking some kind of phenomenon moving through space. It's not an object, Tae-young explained to the team. It's more like a wave. It doesn't destroy anything. It just changes the properties of space itself wherever it passes. Changes how? G1 asked. The readings are hard to interpret, but it looks like it affects subspace, the region where our FTL drives operate. After this wave passes through an area, the subspace frequencies shift. Current drive technology stops working. One of the Morphid researchers looked alarmed. If FTL drives stop working, we'd be trapped in our home systems. Galactic civilization would collapse. G1 stared at the data, understanding finally clicking into place. The humans knew. They detected this years ago. They studied it, analyzed it, and realized it was coming. And then they decided to leave. But why leave? Tae-young asked. Why not work together to find a solution? Sun Hee, listening to the meeting remotely, had an answer. Because that's not how humans think. They wouldn't want to cause panic. They wouldn't want other species to depend on them for salvation. So they left quietly and let us figure it out ourselves. 6 months after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council met in emergency session for the 3rd time that week. The carefully balanced system of treaties and agreements that had kept peace for decades was falling apart. Without human mediators to smooth over disputes and find compromises, old hatreds were surfacing. The Vrexian Empire and the Morphid Collective were on the brink of war. The dispute had started small, just an argument about shipping lanes that both species used. In the past, a human mediator would have found a solution within days. Now, after 2 months of failed negotiations, both sides had moved military fleets into position. Haiyan Qi sat in the mediator's chair, the same chair that Han Wu had once occupied. As one of the abandoned humans, he felt a responsibility to continue his species' work. But he was quickly learning that being human wasn't enough. The talent for mediation that seemed to come naturally to his species was not something he possessed in the same measure. The Vrexian Empire has historical rights to those lanes, the Vrexian general argued, his scales flashing dark red with anger. We've used them for 3 centuries. The Morphid representative, a being of flowing liquid contained in a transparent shell, rippled with equal anger. Historical rights mean nothing. The lanes pass through neutral space. They belong to whoever uses them. Xian Qi tried to find middle ground. What if we established a sharing schedule? Each species could use the lanes on alternating weeks. Both sides rejected the proposal immediately. The Vrexian general stood up and left the chamber. The Morphid representative followed. Within hours, the Vrexian Empire announced it was pulling out of 3 major treaties. The Morphid Collective responded by closing their borders to all. Vrexian ships. Tael single quotes Veng found Haiyan Qi sitting alone in the empty council chamber after everyone had left. You did your best. My best wasn't good enough, Haiyan Qi said quietly. Haiyan Wu would have found a way. Perhaps. But Haiyan Wu had decades of experience. You've had 6 months. Haiyan Qi looked up at the crystalline ambassador. How did they do it? How did humans always manage to make everyone happy? Tylvin considered the question. I don't think they made everyone happy. I think they made everyone feel heard. There's a difference. Across the galaxy, the economic situation was deteriorating. The Singing Colony's financial analysts had been warning about this for months, but now the predictions were becoming reality. Trade routes that humans had negotiated were breaking down. Technology sharing agreements were being disputed. Even simple contracts were falling apart because no one trusted anyone else to interpret them fairly. G1 spent most of her time now trying to hold things together rather than investigating humanity's departure. Her duties as Investigator Prime had become secondary to her role as a crisis manager. She attended meeting after meeting, trying to convince species to honor agreements that humans had helped create, but she still found time to continue the investigation. She had become obsessed with understanding humanity's choice. Late at night, after all the meetings ended, she would return to the data they had collected. She read through Haiyan Wu's logs repeatedly, searching for clues about human thinking. One night, she called Sun He for a virtual meeting. I need to understand something. Help me see this from a human perspective. Sun He appeared on the screen, looking tired. She had been working long hours at the research station, trying to keep projects running that had been started by human scientists. What do you want to know? Why did they leave? Really? I understand they detected this phenomenon, this change coming. But why not stay and face it together? Why not work with us to find a solution? Sun He was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you about something that happened when I was young? I was 7 years old, and I fell and broke my arm. My mother rushed me to the hospital. The doctors fixed it, put a cast on, gave me pain medication. I was fine, but for weeks after, my mother couldn't stop checking on me. Every few minutes, she'd ask if I was okay, if I needed anything, if the arm hurt. She was trying to help, but it was making me feel helpless. I don't understand. My father finally told her to stop. He said, if you keep treating her like she's broken, she'll never feel whole again. That's what humans understood about their role in the galaxy. If they stayed and solved this problem for everyone, the other species would never feel capable of solving their own problems. G1 thought about that. So they left us to struggle? They left you to grow. The investigation team made a breakthrough when they finally cracked one of the quantum encrypted files they had found. It took 3 months of work and the combined processing power of 12 different computer systems. But they finally accessed the data. The file contained research from a human scientific station that had been studying the change. Tae Yang presented the findings to the council. The humans called it the silence because it dampens subspace frequencies, he explained. It moves through the galaxy at a predictable rate. They estimated it would reach the core systems in approximately 4.5 years. That timeline matches with when they left. What does it do? Someone asked. It makes space travel impossible, at least with current technology. Once the silence passes through a region, standard FTL drives stop functioning. Any ship trying to enter warp would simply tear itself apart. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Without FTL travel, every species would be trapped in their home systems. Galactic civilization would fragment into isolated pockets, unable to communicate or trade or help each other. The humans knew this was coming, G1 said. They studied it for years. They must have been trying to find a solution. Did they find one? Tylvin asked. I don't know, but I intend to find out. Meanwhile, the Vrexian Empire was fracturing. Without human mediators, old regional disputes were turning violent. 3 colonial governors declared independence. The military was divided over how to respond. Civil war seemed inevitable. The Morphid Collective had sealed itself away, refusing all contact with other species. They had always been slightly isolated, but human diplomats had maintained good relationships with them. Now, without those connections, they retreated into complete isolation. The Kelthrine hive mind was experiencing something even more disturbing. The unity that defined their species was beginning to break down. They relied on a complex network of quantum communication across vast distances. Small groups were beginning to lose touch with the greater whole, developing their own thoughts and identities separate from the collective. Taeyang was one of those affected. He found himself thinking independently more and more often, having opinions that didn't match the collective consensus. It was frightening and exhilarating at the same time. Is this what it's like to be human? He asked Sun He during one of their research meetings. What do you mean? Feeling alone in your own head, having thoughts that no one else shares. Sun He smiled sadly. Yes, that's exactly what it's like. As the galaxy crumbled around them, the abandoned humans worked harder than ever to help. Sun He coordinated scientific efforts to understand the silence. Minji trained engineers from different species to maintain human-designed technology. Haiyan Qi kept trying to mediate disputes, even though he failed more often than he succeeded. Bei Ora helped educate young beings from various species about cooperation and understanding. They were 17 people trying to do the work of 300 million. It was impossible, and they knew it, but they kept trying anyway. G1 found another important clue in an abandoned human embassy. It was a message written by Haiyan Wu, addressed to whoever might find it. The message was simple but profound. We leave behind everything we built, not because we don't care, but because we care too much. If we stayed, you would always look to us for answers. You would always wonder if you're capable of standing on your own. We believe you are. We believe in you more than you believe in yourselves. The tools are there. The knowledge is ready. You just need to trust yourself to use them." Reading those words, Hui-Wan felt something shift inside her. Anger had been her constant companion for months. Anger at humanity for leaving. Anger at her own species for not being better. Anger at herself for not understanding sooner. But now she felt something else. Not quite understanding, but perhaps the beginning of it. That night, she called a meeting of her investigation team. "We've been asking the wrong question. We keep asking why they left. We should be asking what they left behind." 1 year after humanity's departure, the first Edge colonies began reporting something that terrified everyone. The silence had arrived. A mining colony on the Galactic Rim tried to send a supply ship to the nearest trade hub. The ship engaged its FTL drive and simply came apart, pieces scattered across normal space like broken toys. G1's team rushed to investigate. They arrived in conventional ships, taking weeks to reach the affected zone instead of the usual hours. What they found confirmed humanity's research. The properties of subspace had changed. The frequencies that FTL drives relied on no longer existed in their familiar form. Space itself had been transformed into something new. How long until it reaches the core systems? Tylvin asked when G1 reported back. At its current rate of expansion, 3.5 years. Maybe less. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. For once, old disputes were forgotten. Every species faced the same existential threat. They would all be isolated, cut off from each other, trapped in their home systems unless they found a solution. "We need to access the rest of the human research," P1 said. They studied this for years. They must have found something. The Council authorized unlimited resources for breaking the remaining quantum encryption. Dozens of species contributed their best computer systems and cryptographers. Working together, they managed to crack another file in just 2 weeks. This file was different. It contained a message from Haiyan Wu, recorded shortly before humanity's departure. G1 watched it alone first, then called Sun He to watch it with her. Haiyan Wu looked directly into the camera, his expression serious but calm. "If you're watching this, you've discovered the silence. You understand the threat. You're probably afraid. That's okay. Fear is rational. But it's not helpful." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. Humanity discovered the silence 7 years ago. We've spent those years studying it, analyzing it, trying to understand what it means. Here's what we learned. The silence isn't destroying space. It's evolving it. The galaxy is changing, becoming something new. Our technology, all our technology, is based on the old configuration of space. We need new technology for the new reality. Sun He grabbed G1's arm. They found a solution. "We did find a solution," Haiyan Wu continued in the recording. "It took 5 years of research and testing. We developed new drive systems, new communication methods, new ways of traveling and connecting across the transformed regions of space. The technology works. We tested it. It's reliable." G1 felt hope rising in her chest. Then Haiyan Wu said something that changed everything. "But we can't give it to you. Not directly. If we hand you the solution, you'll always wonder if you could have found it yourselves. You'll always feel dependent, less capable, like children being helped by adults. That's not the relationship we want. That's not the galaxy we want to leave behind." "What?" G1 said out loud, even though it was a recording. "What are you talking about?" "So we did something else," Haiyan Wu said. "We hid the solution. We broke it into pieces and scattered those pieces across every human facility in the galaxy. We left clues, guides, research notes. Everything you need to understand the new technology and build it yourselves. You just have to find it. The recording ended. G1 and Sun He stared at each other in disbelief. They hid the solution? G1 said, "While the galaxy is falling apart, while we're racing against time, they hid the one thing that could save us?" Sun He was quiet for a long moment. Then she started laughing. Not happy laughter, but the kind that comes from realizing something profound and slightly insane. "What's funny about this?" G1 demanded. "Don't you see? This is the most human thing they could have done. They didn't abandon us. They left us a treasure hunt. They forced us to work together, to search through their facilities, to understand their res. They're making us cooperate. People are dying. Colonies are isolated. The galaxy is fragmenting. And yet you've noticed that the Council has stopped fighting over shipping lanes, haven't you? The Vrexians and the Morphids are working together on the decryption effort. The Kelthrine are sharing resources with the singing colonies. Everyone is cooperating because they have to." G1 wanted to be angry, but she couldn't deny the truth. In the past year, despite all the conflicts and problems, something had changed. The species that had been drifting apart were now pulling together, united by a common threat. She called an immediate meeting of the Council and shared Haiyan Wu's message. The reaction was mixed. Some species were relieved that a solution existed. Others were furious that humanity had hidden it. But everyone agreed on one thing. They needed to find those pieces and assemble the solution before the silence reached the core systems. The search became the galaxy's primary focus. Every abandoned human facility was systematically explored. Research teams from a dozen species worked together, sharing discoveries and pooling their knowledge. The process was slow and frustrating, but gradually they started finding pieces of the puzzle. Minji made a crucial discovery on an abandoned human research station. Hidden in the maintenance systems was a complete set of designs for a new type of FTL drive. But the designs were incomplete, filled with gaps that needed to be filled in. "It's like a teaching tool," Minji explained to the research team. "They gave us the framework, but left out key components. We have to figure out those parts ourselves." "Why would they do that?" a Vrexian engineer asked. "Because figuring it out will teach us things that just being told the answer wouldn't. Look here." She pointed to a gap in the designs. "This section deals with how the drive interacts with transformed subspace. To complete this, we need to understand subspace physics at a fundamental level. The humans are forcing us to learn, not just copy." Over the following months, research teams from multiple species worked together on the problem. Vrexian engineers contributed their understanding of power systems. Morphid physicists provided insights into fluid dynamics that applied to transformed subspace. The Kelthrine, with their quantum communication networks, understood frequency harmonics in ways other species didn't. Even the singing colonies, beings of pure energy, offered perspectives that carbon-based species couldn't have imagined. Sun He coordinated much of this effort. As one of the few remaining humans, she understood human thinking and could often interpret the clues that humanity had left behind. But she was careful not to simply provide answers. Instead, she guided other species to find the answers themselves. "The humans left this gap in the designs on purpose," she would say. "What do you think they want us to learn?" G1 watched this process with growing wonder. What had seemed like chaos and collapse was actually transformation. The galaxy was learning to work together in ways it never had before. The human departure hadn't destroyed galactic civilization. It was forcing that civilization to evolve. She visited each of the abandoned humans, interviewing them about their experiences. Haiyan Qi had finally succeeded as a mediator, not by using human techniques, but by developing his own approach. Bo Ra had started educational exchanges between species, teaching young beings to appreciate different perspectives. Minji had trained hundreds of engineers, each of whom went on to train others. Do you understand now why they left us behind? G1 asked Sun He. I think so. We're bridges. We're here to help translate human thinking for species that think differently. But we're not here to give answers. We're here to help everyone find their own answers. At an abandoned human facility on a remote moon, the investigation team made their most important discovery yet. Minji found a hidden complex that required solving a series of puzzles to access. The puzzles weren't difficult, but they required cooperation between multiple species. No single species had all the tools or knowledge needed to solve them alone. Inside the complex, they found something extraordinary. Complete blueprints for adapting to the silence. New FTL drives, new communication systems, new methods for detecting and navigating through transformed space. But more than that, they found something else. Instructions for building the technology were written in a way that required multiple species to work together. The Vrexian portion focused on power generation. The Morphid section dealt with fluid dynamics. The Kelthrine documents covered quantum communication. The Singing Colony's contribution involved energy-based navigation. Each piece was incomplete without the others. They designed this so we'd have to cooperate, Ta Yang said, understanding finally dawning. Not just to find the solution, but to implement it. No single species can build this technology alone. Cubby 1 stood in that complex, surrounded by representatives from 9 different species, all working together to understand what humanity had left behind. She thought about Haiyan Wu's final message, about how humanity had chosen to leave so that other species could grow, about how sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the space to become strong on their own. The Galactic Council had crumbled under the mystery of humanity's departure. But from those ruins, something new was being built, something stronger. 18 months after humanity's departure, the silence reached the mid-rim colonies. Several species lost contact with their outer settlements. Panic threatened to overwhelm the careful progress that had been made. But this time, things were different. The galaxy had learned to work together. Sundash. He stood in the main laboratory of the research station, surrounded by scientists from 7 different species. They were testing the first prototype of the new FTL drive, built using the designs they had pieced together from abandoned human facilities. The drive looked nothing like the old technology. It was a collaboration of different engineering philosophies, combining Vrexian power systems with Morphid flow dynamics and Kelthrine quantum principles. Powering up, Min Ji announced from the control station. She had become the lead engineer on the project, teaching dozens of other species while learning from them in return. The drive hummed to life. Energy readings were stable. All systems showed green. Minji took a deep breath and engaged the drive. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space around the test vessel bent in ways that shouldn't be possible. The ship moved, not through normal space or even traditional subspace, but through something new. Something that worked in the transformed regions where the silence had passed. The ship traveled 10 light years in 3 minutes and returned safely. The laboratory erupted in celebration. Beings from different species embraced, their old conflicts forgotten in the joy of shared success. G1 watched from the observation deck, a rare smile on her face. She had been promoted again, now serving as the Council's coordinator of interspecies cooperation. It was a position that hadn't existed before humanity left. It was a position humanity had made necessary by leaving. She sent a message to all the Council members. We did it, the first successful test of adapted FTL technology. We're ready to begin widespread implementation. The responses came quickly, enthusiastic messages from species that had been fighting just months ago. The Vrexian Empire had stabilized, its civil war averted when the different factions united to face the common threat. The Morphid Collective had reopened its borders, realizing that isolation wasn't the answer. Even the Kelthrine hive mind had found new strength in its fragmentation, learning that individual thought didn't mean losing their connection to each other. Hyan Ki had become the Council's primary mediator. He didn't try to imitate human techniques anymore. Instead, he had developed his own approach, one that respected his nature while serving the greater good. He was currently helping negotiate a trade agreement between 3 species that had been enemies for centuries. "How did you do it?" Tylvin asked him during a break in the negotiations. "I stopped trying to make everyone agree," Hyan Ki said. "Instead, I helped them understand why they disagree. Once people feel understood, they're usually willing to compromise." That sounds like something Hyan Wu would have said. Maybe, but I figured it out myself. That's what matters. Across the galaxy, 17 species successfully implemented the new technology. They built ships that could navigate through transformed space. They established communication networks that worked despite the changed subspace frequencies. They learned to thrive in the new reality that the silence had created, but 12 other species refused to adapt. They clung to old technology, insisted that the traditional methods would continue to work, rejected the cooperation that the new systems required. Some sealed themselves away in pocket dimensions of unchanged space, using experimental technology to hold back the silence's transformation. Others simply isolated themselves, hoping the problem would somehow resolve itself. G1 tried to help them, but there was only so much she could do. Some species weren't ready to change. Some species weren't willing to trust their neighbors enough to build the cooperative technology that humanity had designed. It was a painful lesson, but an important one. "We can't save everyone," Sun He told her during one of their regular meetings. The humans understood that. That's why they gave us tools, not solutions. Some species will use those tools. Others won't. That's their choice. The transformation wave continued its steady march toward the galactic core. But now, instead of fleeing from it, the adapted species followed close behind. They established new colonies in the transformed regions. They built trading posts and communication relays. They turned the silence from a threat into an opportunity. Taeyang made one final discovery in an abandoned human facility near Earth's former location. He had been systematically searching through old records, following a hunch that there was more to learn. Deep in the planetary archive, he found a quantum storage device that activated only when the silence transformation was complete in the local region. Inside was a message from Hyan Wu. His final message. Gi-1 gathered everyone important to watch it together. The council leadership, the abandoned humans, key scientists and engineers from multiple species. They assembled in the main council chamber, which had been rebuilt and redesigned to accommodate the new spirit of cooperation. Hyan Wu appeared on the screen, looking exactly as he had in his departure message 18 months earlier. But now, watching him, G1 saw something she hadn't noticed before. He wasn't sad or regretful. He looked hopeful. "If you're watching this, it means you succeeded," Hyan Wu said. "You found the pieces we left behind. You figured out how to adapt. You learned to work together. We knew you could do it. We always knew." He smiled, and it was a genuine, warm smile. "Now I can tell you the rest of the truth. We didn't flee from the silence. We ran toward it. Humanity went into the transformed regions first, serving as scouts and pathfinders. We documented what we found. We mapped routes. We tested the technology in conditions that would have been too dangerous to risk other species." Sun He gasped. Around the room, other beings reacted with similar shock. "We're still out there," Hyan Wu continued. "Watching, waiting, making sure it's safe, making sure you can follow when you're ready. We didn't abandon you. We prepared the way. The message showed images of human ships moving through impossible space. Images of human colonies established in fully transformed regions, thriving in conditions that shouldn't support life. Images of humans smiling, waving at cameras, very much alive. We'll come back, Haiyan-Wu said, when the transformation is complete and the galaxy is ready. But we won't come back as saviors or leaders. We'll come back as equals, as fellow travelers in a new reality. We'll come back to a galaxy that learned to save itself. A message explained humanity's reasoning. They had faced a choice 7 years ago. They could stay and solve the problem for everyone, becoming the species that everyone depended on. Or they could leave and let other species find their own strength. They chose to believe in the galaxy's potential rather than its need for human help. Some of you might be angry that we left, Haiyan-Wu said. That's okay. Some of you might feel abandoned. That's understandable. But I hope, in time, you'll understand what we were trying to do. We weren't leaving because we didn't care. We were leaving because we cared too much to let you stay dependent on us. He paused, looking directly into the camera with an intensity that made it feel like he was in the room with them. To the 17 humans we left behind. Sun-Hee, Minji, Hyeon-Ki, Ba-Ora, and all the others. Thank you. You were chosen carefully, left behind with purpose. You became the bridges we needed, helping others understand human thinking without simply providing human answers. Your sacrifice made this possible. Sun-Hee was crying. So were several of the other abandoned humans. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of understanding, of finally knowing why they had been left behind. Your seats on the council remain empty, Haiyan-Wu said. Not as memorials, but as reserved places. When we return, we'll sit beside you, not above you. We'll work with you, not for you. That's the galaxy we want. That's the future we believe in. The message ended with images of human ships continuing deeper into the transformed galaxy, mapping routes and establishing waypoints. They were leaving a trail for others to follow. Whenever those others were ready, Gaiwan stood up, her voice strong despite her emotions. The council should formalize this. Humanity's seats remain empty but honored, reserved for the day they return. The vote was unanimous. Every species agreed. Even those that had been most angry about humanity's departure understood now what had really happened. Sun-Hee stood at the viewport of New Pyongyang Station, now restored and thriving under Kelthrine management. The station was busier than it had been when humans ran it, filled with species working together in ways they never had before. She wasn't lonely anymore. The abandoned humans had become something more than remnants of a departed species. They had become teachers, guides, and friends to beings from across the galaxy. She thought about Haiyan-Wu's message, about how humanity had chosen to trust the galaxy's potential rather than solve its problems, about how sometimes the greatest love you can show someone is believing they can succeed without you. A Vrexian engineer approached her, one of the many she had trained over the past months. Dr. Sun-Hee, we're ready to test the long-range communication system. Would you like to supervise? No, she said, smiling. You don't need me for that anymore. You know what to do. The engineer looked proud and slightly nervous. Are you sure? I'm sure. You've got this. She watched the engineer walk away, confident and capable. That was humanity's real gift to the galaxy. Not technology or solutions, but the belief that everyone could be capable if given the chance to try. The silence continued spreading through the galaxy, transforming space itself. But now it wasn't feared. It was understood as a natural evolution, something to adapt to rather than fight against. The galaxy was being reborn, and for the first time in its history, all its species were facing that rebirth together. Somewhere beyond the transformed regions, human ships continued their work, mapping routes, testing conditions, preparing for the day when they could return home. Not as the species that saved everyone, but as the species that believed everyone could save themselves. And in the reformed Galactic Council, 200 empty seats waited patiently, honored and maintained, ready for the day when humanity would return to take their place among equals in a galaxy they had helped save by leaving it.